it's hard to ignore people's opinions, right? And it's hard. It's not easy to just focus on yourself and focus on what you can do better and not be worried about what other people are going to think of you. But it's a work in progress, and that's something I've been working on within myself. Um, and I think there are many moments that spotlight, I guess, me improving in that regard.
I'm joined with Fudge after an unfortunate defeat to Team Liquid. It always feels worse when it's Team Liquid, but it is what it is. What went wrong in that game? Because the early game was like really bad, and then slowly you guys clawed back in, and then somehow they opened like a 4K gold lead.
Yeah, I think it was a combination of like their composition is very good when ahead, because they have a lot of side lane control with like Nefiri and Kaisa, with Azia and Galio. Also, like Rumble struggles a little bit against a lot of side lane threat, especially when behind, because you can't really get away from anyone as long as they're on you. I think the early game was a mixture of like, I think hadn't really played against Nefiri Galio as much with Rumble, but I think in that matchup specifically, you have to be very, very careful of taking any health in your trades early game. And that led me to being like able to be dove, because obviously Nefiri can become untargetable in a dive and is very strong at that point at level 4, which most junglers can't really dive you in that case, except Nefiri, really. Um, so I think my early game was a little bit bad. I probably should have played with a different mindset instead of trading, playing more to just get as much CS as I could whilst my jungler just full cleared and let him, um, just so that Nefiri couldn't get any dive plays off on me. And then, I mean, I think they kind of messed up a lot, to be honest, in mid game. I think if they played really smoothly, the game would have been really, really hard to play, because there's no obvious playmaking on our team other than Ashe ult. And if they were just constantly aware of Ashe ulti, like timings and stuff like this, then I think they would have probably not gotten caught as many times and given us some leads back. But after that, I think we made a couple mistakes. Maybe around like, I think it was like mid game, like in between like 16 minutes and 20 or something like this. That we died a couple times on. I think it was when we went for the Nefiri play on top with Poppy and Red Buff, and then there was probably a couple times after that. But realistically, the game's pretty hard to play out from the early game. If you lose 6 grubs against that composition, the side lane threat is enormous, and you kind of can't really ignore the side, but you also can't really, uh, win side at the same time with that comp. I think the Jace side is the only side that can really fight. Rumble can't really fight into a Galio and a Fury. Um, So we were kind of forced to just hit objectives and try to fight our way out of it, even though they had better side lane position and better position on the team fights. But we were coming back a little bit. I think we played okay after the early game, and then obviously could have cleaned it up a little bit and maybe would have won if they made a couple more mistakes.
Yeah, like you said, it felt like you didn't have much of a choice. You had to like overgroup on these dragons, but then they were like taking like 2, 3 towers every time, and then it was just like they were
Right.
ahead, not much to do.
Right.
Um, I wanted to ask specifically about your Rumble because you're not necessarily a Rumble player. At least I don't remember you to be a Rumble player.
Mhm. Mhm.
Is this like a like Rumble like growing pains? You mentioned how like you've never really played Rumble versus like a Galio plus Nefiri. Is this just like, hey, I'm trying to expand my champion pool and like we're kind of learning?
Yeah, I mean, I was never really a big Rumble player. I mean, I think most of the Rumble players are players that played before me, like, you know, maybe 2017, 2018, because that was when Rumble was really OP. But as soon as I came in like 2019, 2020, it wasn't really picked. And I never really had to learn it at any point. And I was never a big Rumble player. I didn't really think the champion was great. Like, a champion like Jace, for example, I think kind of fits in a lot of comps, and Rumble is something that's very like you can be seen as a little bit more like specific to certain comps. But I mean, I started picking it up. Obviously, I've played it like mildly throughout the past couple of years, but I hadn't really played it on stage much because I never really thought it was the best pick in a lot of the time. But recently, we started playing a lot more Rumble. I started getting on top of it, and I think that I'm not fantastic on the champion, but I think it's like I think I'm fine at it. I think I'm decent at it, and I don't think the champion's super difficult to play. it's kind of just, um to be honest, that game I think is just kind of hard for me to play.
Mhm.
I think it's literally just they have a Kai'Sa and they have an Azir who have a lot of side lane position on me and abilities to catch me out with a Galio and a Neferi that have a lot of, once again, side lane control, which forces me to team fight into uh, many champions that have dashes and invulnerabilities and ways to get out of my ult with Galio and Neferi W and Azir E and Kai'Sa ult and Kai'Sa E and Nico flanking from another bush and flashing on me. So to be honest with you, I think the game itself for Rumble is just difficult. There's no clear target, and my early game could have been cleaned up a little bit more. Even though it is difficult for me to play in the early game because they have an Neferi jungle pathing towards top, and my jungler can't path towards top, otherwise he's getting invaded by the Neferi.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of forced to play very, very defensively for the early game, and then forced to team fight into a comp that's not an easy team fight comp. So yeah.
Speaking of team fighting and like side lanings and whatnot, that's something that like Shopify have had an issue with even since last year. But obviously, like different players, we're always like bleeding side lanes.
Mhm.
Even when we're like up in kills or like we're down in towers, the waves are always on our side and whatnot. Yesterday, I felt like was the first time where we actually like weren't bleeding out in our side lanes and we actually like pushed our side lanes before like grouping. I think overgrouping is sort of the term that I'm looking for.
Mhm.
It feels like Shopify tend to overgroup, not just this game, but just in general. How do you go about
Uh,
like working on that, or do you just maybe disagree?
uh, I'm sure there are scenarios where I could have taken an extra wave, but I think it's also easy to see from a spectator point of view, and also I think a spectators also lack the perspective of like exactly what I'm thinking when I group. For me specifically, I think um, yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot of people are gonna say that we overgroup, but like, if you were to show me scenarios, I'm sure I could argue cases on both sides for every single decision I've made. Because I've always thought a lot about when to group, when to move, when to take the waves, and there are many timings where their only play is to look for a side pick, and I give a wave because if I just group, we should
Mm.
just win the fight. And I think people just think, oh, but you could take the wave, but I'm like, but what can they do when I don't take the wave? Is my perspective, right? A lot of the time. Um, and I think it's just a matter of like you have to look at it from many different perspectives. And I'm sure there are cases where I could have gone for the side wave. I'm not going to argue that I do it perfectly, but I do think there's also kind of just a little bit of a narrative that isn't necessarily well substantiated, I guess.
All right. One thing that I've always heard about you, even before you joined the team, was that Fudge is a really, really smart player. He thinks a lot about the game, and he watches a lot of VODs, and he really like he all his decisions are like something that he's thought of rather than autopilot. That's something like I've heard from ex teammates, ex coaches, like even plays pros that played against you, except for one person who seems to think you're an NPC. And I know
Mhm.
you like responded to this by saying, "I'm not going to respond," but I'm going to ask it a little bit of a different way. Community sentiment has been very negative on you. The split, they've really felt like your trajectory on Cloud Nine was like up, 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 and then down, 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 and it's like consistently going down on Shopify. So,
Mhm.
from your perspective, um, how would you rate your like level right now and like the direction that you're going in?
Right now, I think the direction I'm going in is good. I think I'm improving a lot the past couple weeks. My level isn't perfect, and all I'm doing is focusing on how do I can get better week by week, day by day. So, thinking about community sentiment, I mean, I generally try to ignore it personally. I think it's kind of just toxic to think about because I think most of it is kind of just people who are very negative in their daily lives and it seeps into their comments. So I try to ignore most of it. I think it's not necessarily completely untrue that I played poorly in some games. I mean, I'm sure there's many games where I played poorly, and every game I make mistakes. So, but I do think community narrative is kind of just like um, it's bound to be negative unless you're a god. Like I feel like unless you're the top team, you're going to be thought of as a bad player by everyone community wise. And honestly, like even if I was like for whatever reason playing just the exact same on and we were winning games, I think the community negative would be mainly positive. So it's just the reality of like if you lose games, people are going to be negative on you. Um, and I think it's kind of just popular to be negative towards me because I was very, you could say, toxic a couple years ago with my um, comments on other people and fans and all this kind of stuff. I think generally I just try to ignore it, and I think it's a lot of it is just kind of not useful to think about.
I'll agree with you there, but I do think that a big part of it, especially now that like a lot of the fans that were just like toxic and just watched to see people lose, like gone, and were kind of like more grassroots. They're just like genuine like fans of the team, and they're looking like, for example, the past two games. I know you won last game, the game before against FlyQuest and your NAR. Like a lot of people were happy about it. You guys lost, but they're like, oh, Fudge is playing great. And so it's like regardless of like win or lose, it's more of like, oh, when we look at the game, we feel like he's making a difference versus when we look at the game, we feel like he's
Yeah.
playing to lose or like playing not to win rather than playing,
Yeah,
you
playing
know.
not to win versus playing not to lose versus playing to win.
Yeah, yeah, there
I
we
mean,
go.
I think I can kind of see that mentality. I mean, the, playing not to lose thing is definitely something I've worked on as a player. I think in past years, even when I was on C9, I think even in 2022, when I was winning on C9, and even 2023 spring when I was winning on C9, I was still in that mentality uh, of playing not to lose rather than playing to win. But I was winning, so it didn't really matter, right? So
Yeah.
like the narrative is gonna be like, oh, when he was on C9 and winning, he was like really fucking good. The reality was, I thought I didn't change that much as a player, as a person, and my mentality. Like realistically, you don't change that much as a person a lot, like that fast, right?
Mhm.
I was still playing not to lose. I was still scared of like most people's like opinions if I play bad and stuff. So I was like scared to make mistakes, and that's the struggles of being a player in the spotlight, right? Um, but the reality is like, yeah, I've worked on that mentality within myself. I think there's always going to be something to improve on your mentality, and it's hard to ignore people's opinions, right? And it's hard. It's not easy to just focus on yourself and focus on what you can do better and not be worried about what other people are going to think of you. But it's a work in progress, and that's something I've been working on within myself. Um, and I think there are many moments that spotlight, I guess, me improving in that regard. For example, in the Now game versus FlyQuest, when I tried to kill MF on mid after they were going to run to the Elder, and there was no other option because we were going to lose Elder, I think maybe past me would be like, oh, I don't want to make that play because it's probably not going to go well and I'm just going to die. And it's just going to be, it just looks bad, right? Like, but it's not something I think about. It's kind of just a feeling I have, right? I think now I'm kind of just more willing to go for something and be like, I mean, yeah, that's my only option. That's the best play, right? That's how we're going to win as a team. And it's not really so much about like people's opinions, uh, at least consciously. I'm sure
Mhm.
subconsciously there's some sort of like fear, but I don't think it's super useful to think about a lot. Is what I'm saying. I guess is like what are people's opinions of my play gonna be? I think it's more so what's my opinion and how do I improve on it. Um, I'm not saying they aren't important and people shouldn't have opinions, but it's more so just for my improvement and my well-being. I think it's best I think about kind of think about it in my own self and
Yeah,
my
no.
team, of course.
Yeah,
Take my
yeah.
team's opinion, of course.
I agree. No, that's it's really cool that you're able to even give like a specific example of like, oh, this was a play I wouldn't have made before, but now that I've kind of worked on this mentality, I went for it. Didn't work out, but hey, you had no other option, right?
Hmm.
So it's cool to see, and I hope that you can keep on working on it. And obviously, as a Shopify fan, I want to see you like feast on all your opponents, and hopefully destroy 100 Thieves tomorrow. They're not looking
Yes,
too good, so I think we got a shot.
yeah, I think so too. I think they're not looking super clean,
All right.
and I think we've improved. Even though today's game wasn't the best, I think we've improved. So I have confidence in our team.
All right, good luck. I hope to see y'all win tomorrow. I'll be
Thank you very
cheering.
much. Appreciate it.
All right, take care, man. Honestly, that was a really cool um just like expression from Fudge of like his challenges that he's had in C9 and just like in general his journey. Um I haven't had too many chances to talk to him, obviously, but it's nice to see that there's something that he's thinking about and like there's clear improvement, like the MF play where he jumped on MF and that thing just fell. Oh well, but yeah, it was like super cool for him to just like be so up in front and honest, and like this is more of what I want to start getting into my interviews, not just asking about the games, but asking about like the development of the games. If you look at the interviews that I've done this week, which I haven't uploaded most of them because I did so many so far, But if you look at them, you'll notice like a theme where I ask a little bit about the game, I ask about the team, and then I ask about like the person himself, his career, what brought him into this situation, like how he ended up in this position. Like with Fudge, it was about obviously him being an NPC, but like with every other player with Seus, which should be coming out maybe tomorrow or something, it was more about like his career, his transition, things like that. But yeah, that's sort of the vibe that I want to get with more of my players. APA as well, that should be coming out soon. Yeah, I got a lot of interviews. I'll see what I can do.